Welcome to, or welcome back to, the Agatha May Detective Agency. I'm Agatha May, and in this video, we are finally getting to part 2 of the Rose Petal murder case. I will leave a link to part 1 in the description box. The trial for this case started last week, and the prosecution wrapped up their case by midday on Friday. If you want a recap of each day, I highly recommend Pretty Lies and Alibis. She does a fantastic job at breaking down the testimony in court proceedings. I'll leave a link for her channel in the description box as well. It's been a while since my first video about this case, so here's a quick rundown of the individuals in this murder case. Christina Parcell was the victim. She was stabbed 35 times, and original reports stated that there were rose petals arranged around her body. But during the first week of testimony, we learned that there were rose petals, but they were randomly scattered around the crime scene. There were also wildflowers and stems found. Bradley Post was Christina's fiancé, and he found Christina the day she died. He was later arrested for 5 counts of sexual exploitation of a minor in the first degree, 1 count of sexual exploitation of a minor in the 3rd degree, 1 count of 3rd-degree criminal sexual content with a minor, and 1 count of buggery, and in this case, that means bestiality. These charges stem from evidence found at the crime scene. Christina was also implicated in the exploitation in court filings. John Mello is Christina's ex-partner. They have a daughter together and were in a contentious custody battle. John had taken the daughter to Italy, and Christina went there to get the daughter, and she had custody of her at the time of her death. John Mello has been charged with conspiracy and harassment for allegedly providing explicit photos of Christina, as well as conspiring to have them mailed to Greenville businesses and individuals. Zachary Hughes is on trial for murdering Christina. He has also been charged with harassment and as the co-conspirator for the explicit photos of Christina. He and John Mello are friends. For not being called as witness as of the date of this recording, and reportedly not on the witness list for the defense, John Mello was a central subject in the prosecution's case. He was in Italy at the time of the murder, so he is detached from the murder by distance, but there is speculation that he was the catalyst behind the killing, and that is because he is the only known connection between Zachary Hughes and Christina Parcell. So who is John Mello? You might decide that you really don't want to know, but I'm going to tell you anyway. According to his Facebook page, Mello is a self-proclaimed songwriter, vocalist, record producer, rock and roll icon, and super dad to the world's greatest kid. His LinkedIn About section reads, "Milestone Sound is a culmination of decades of experience in the music industry, with work divided between my 2 home bases, Greenville, South Carolina, and my European home base of Castelnuovo di Val di Cecina, Pisa, Tuscany, Italy. Prior to Milestone, I was owner-operator of Torn and Frayed Productions, vocalist, lyricist, producer, and consultant. Prior to that, I spent decades as an independent touring and recording backup singer and music industry impresario, including stints at Rocket Records, MCA Records, as well as smaller independent labels, and as owner of the famous Doll Hut Rock and Roll Pub south of Los Angeles, California. I have worked with," and then he drops a bunch of names, and ends with, "I am co-owner of Kosher Pizza Songs Limited music publishing company." I've tried to verify that John Mello is the rock and roll icon he claims to be, and I haven't been able to accomplish that. I searched for Mello as all the things he's claimed to be, vocalist, producer, lyricist, etc., and haven't found anything to corroborate those claims, save for what Mello has written about himself. He claims he and Little Richard were friends for 30 years, but the only proof he has shown of that is a photo from the early 90s showing a young baby-faced Mello with a bored Johnny Johnson and Little Richard, who appears to be desperately searching for the nearest exit. There was an article in an Italian newspaper in September of 2021 about Mello discovering a new singer in Rovigo, Italy, Chiara Chinaglia. The article was under the Pay Letters section and stated that Mello met Chiara while he was at a bar with Zachary Hughes. Mello claimed that he heard Chiara sing and then received a small budget from Virgin Records to record her. Sure he did. He did record her, but he also sang on it. I don't think he should have. The song is on his SoundCloud account, and that's the only place I was able to find it. There it sits with 188 listens, 5 hearts, and an empty comment section. I wasn't able to find a single independent source that verified any of Melo's claims, except for one, and that was that he owned the Doll Hut Bar in Anaheim, California. But it isn't the glittery trophy that Melo pretends it is. He only owned the Doll Hut for a couple of years. He and Linda Jemison were married on July 28, 1989, and opened the Doll Hut Bar in August of 1989. The marriage was very short-lived, and the couple separated on June 6, 1990. They attempted to still run the bar by alternating days that they were there, but that didn't work. By the end of 1991, things had escalated to the point where Linda filed an order of protection against John. They were divorced by 1992. In the divorce documents, there were 9 affidavits filed by people associated with the bar, and none of the affiants had anything even slightly nice to say about Melo. In fact, the claims made Melo out to be a great big jerk face. There were claims made that he was violent and would frequently tase people. One of the affiants alleged, quote, "I have been tased by John Melo, who shocked me with a stun gun, and I have personally observed John Melo use his stun gun on at least 15 other people, shocking them in the back, the neck, etc. John does this for fun. It is because of John Melo's propensity for violence, brandishing weapons, his rude attitude, and his use of his stun gun that neither myself nor any of my friends and associates will frequent or return to the Doll Hut." End quote. Well, he sounds like an utter delight. So Melo did own the bar for 2 years, but Linda is the one who operated it from 1992 until she sold it in 2001. In fact, during the time of the divorce, the bar was in debt, and Linda took it on as part of the divorce settlement. It seems to me that Linda is the one who made the Doll Hut popular, profitable, and an actual music icon. In her petition for that order of protection, Linda alleged that, quote, "On November 14, 1991, Respondent, meaning John Melo, telephoned me at my residence. In the first call, Respondent threatened to put Steve in a shallow grave. In the second call, he stated that, 'I'll stick my gun in your mouth and blow your fluffing brains out.' And in January of 1991, Respondent threatened to have my mother raped. It was reported to the Fullerton Police Department. Respondent has called her at work to threaten her. Respondent has threatened to ruin her career. She worked at UCI, and Respondent called her supervisor and told them that he was with the FBI and was investigating drug charges against her." End quote. The Steve that John Melo allegedly wanted to put into a shallow grave was a man that Linda was dating at the time. She finally received the order of protection as part of the divorce settlement. I will have all 88 pages of their divorce documents available for purchase on my Patreon account. It's a very interesting read and has more allegations of what a charming chump John Melo is. John married Cassandra Raymond in 1994 and they divorced in 2015. Fitz News posted an article on August 2, 2023 about John Melo. In 2014, Mr. Fancy Pants music producer had applied for a producer job at a Greenville music studio. He didn't get the job. So he did what any mature, well-adjusted adult would do and threw a tantrum. He wrote negative posts on Facebook about the studio and sent harassing emails. According to the police report filed by the studio owner, the emails contained threats of bodily harm and attempted blackmail. It wasn't just the studio owner that was on the receiving end of John's tantrums, though. His harassment of local businesses and Greenville citizens was so well known, there was a Facebook group about him named Operation Melodrama. I wonder why he doesn't have that on any of his bios. John Melo loves to tell people that he's an Italian citizen. I mean, he loves to tell them. He was born in Cambridge, Massachusetts. His father is the son of Portuguese immigrants, and his mother's parents were from Italy. However, from what I've learned from my research, both of his maternal grandparents were naturalized, which would preclude John from becoming an Italian citizen. Maybe he found a loophole. After I posted my initial video about the case, John Melo emailed me. In fact, he sent me several emails asking me to tell his side of the story. After 2 emails from him, I knew I didn't like him. After 3, I knew there was no way I wanted to work with him. He tried to lure me in with promises of making it big and making a lot of money if I told his story. Quote, "Sell them the interview, we will share the revenue, and you will get the biggest story scoop on South Carolina." End quote. Even if I did interview him, it would in no way be the biggest story scoop in or on or even around South Carolina. And I can't be tempted with money or stardom. I think I've mentioned before, but mashed potatoes will get me inside the creepy white van way faster than promises of fame and fortune. I found that a lot of times when people are trying to persuade you into doing something, they will offer you things that are important to them. And now you know that if I ever offer you mashed potatoes, I have an ulterior motive. I thought about sharing all of the emails I received from Mello, but that would only be a lesson in frustration because of how atrocious his spelling is. But I will share what he had to say about some of the other individuals in this case. The emails I share are exactly the abominations that Mello wrote, but I've included corrections in brackets. Here is what he had to say about Zachary Hughes. Quote, "Keep in mind that Zach is my friend, and I put him on my contact list because he is a selfless friend and was helping me so much in my cases. Nobody considers this. At the time of my arrest at Charlotte, and my then turning myself in to Greenville as I promised them, and Zach is the one who picked me up and drove me there, Zach was not accused of nor arrested for a darn tootin' thing. He is a friend whom I met only 4 times prior to my moving to Italy, where I'm a citizen, and then he flew over 7 months later to record with me. That's how Wilkins and the cops chose him to frame. He was a loner, had no set daily schedule, he was a friend, etc. They could place him where and when they needed him." End quote. I don't know what Zachary picking up Mello in Greenville had anything to do with anything. And they only met 4 times before John took his daughter to Italy in October of 2020, but then Zach flew to Italy 7 months later to record. And they must have gotten to be good friends while Mello was in Italy because they exchanged 1,769 messages on WhatsApp. And Mello allegedly convinced Zachary to mail explicit photos of Christina and told her to harass the ish out of her. Along with other damning evidence presented in court, there was also testimony that Zachary's DNA was under Christina's fingernails. So the idea that he was framed, which was far-fetched to begin with, seems completely ridiculous. Zachary didn't mention a trip to Italy on his Facebook page and didn't mention recording with John Mello. In fact, he never mentioned John Mello on any post on his Facebook page. I did find a comment exchange between him and Mello, though. The post was a video of Zachary playing Beethoven's Piano Sonata No. 13 in E-flat major, Opus 27, No. 1. Mello: "Pretty good, but Beethoven ain't rock and roll and you ain't no Johnny Johnson." And he included a video for the song Roll Over Beethoven. Hughes: "This is my new favorite song." Mello: "That piano is Johnny. We were friends. This is the iconic Johnny Johnson who invented rock and roll piano, which of course the legend and my friend of 30 years, the original madman of rock, Little Richard, those two along with Jerry Lee Lewis originated rock and roll, not just piano." And then Mello dropped a bunch of names again and ended that comment with, "You are not a piano player if you don't study these masters." Hughes: "I have studying to do." Mello: "Johnny, the master of boogie-woogie rock and roll piano, rehearsing with Chuck Berry, Eric Clapton, blah, 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 blah. This is the ultimate group of musicians. This is Nirvana. You can die after watching this." And he posted a video of Johnny Johnson playing the piano. Hughes: "One of the best things I've ever heard." Mello: "Learn the trip hammer and you were a piano player for real. This ish they don't teach at Juilliard. Ha ha, it can't be taught." Hughes: "Ahem. The Juilliard School." Mello: "Relax, man. It ain't like it's the Royal Academy of Music in London. It's a AA team." Well, that seems like a toxic relationship. Zachary attended the Juilliard School and is a classically trained pianist. His jam is Beethoven. But Mello was insinuating that he wasn't a real piano player if he didn't play in a completely different style. It's possible, and maybe even likely, that Mello would say he was just joking, but I don't think that kind of joking is funny. What is funny, though, is that in 2021, when this common exchange happened, The Juilliard School was ranked as the #1 music college in the world. The Royal Academy of Music was #4. While creeping Zachary's Facebook page, I also came across this comment by someone who had an encounter with Mello. Quote, I was 17, had just left the gym and went to grab coffee from Port City, Java. He was sitting out front with a younger blonde fellow, stopped me and asked what perfume I was wearing with this creepy grin. I knew I reeked of sweat. I shut him down and he got offended. I shared this experience with a friend of mine who knew him personally, and said friend claimed that Mello was known for being creepy towards minors. End quote. I haven't been able to watch the entire trial, but I did get to hear one person's testimony that was terribly intriguing to me, and that was the testimony of Vanessa Cormo. She's an attorney in Greenville and was the guardian ad litem in the custody hearing between Christina Parcell and John Melo. Vanessa's testimony was entirely about Mello, and although she was very diplomatic, she was not complimentary towards him. She testified that he was a difficult client. She and Mello interacted almost entirely through emails, and his emails to her were copious. And by copious, I mean it took 3 to 4 reams of paper to print them all out for the custody hearing. She also spoke of how Mello is a horrible speller, and his emails are difficult to read. She told how she had third-party entities emailing her on behalf of Mello. One was an alleged attorney and another was a private investigator, but she could never verify that these people were real. She suspected that Mello was sending them. She stated that Proton Mail was used for some of these third-party messages, and that one time Mello messed up and accidentally messaged her as himself from the fake attorney's account. She also testified that, quote, he was continuing to harass, threaten, intimidate, bully. His communications were unlike anything I've ever encountered as a guardian, and so they continued to escalate. I was pretty concerned. He would tell me that I always needed to be looking over my shoulder, that he was coming after my license, that I was going to get arrested for criminal charges or civil charges, that I was definitely going to jail. He mentioned my children by name with specific information about them with one visitation I had with him. He put terrible things on the internet about me, including my office address and phone number. He actually included my husband in his post. He said awful things, that we were trafficking children, Ukrainian children, through Spartanburg. That's like on the internet. There's Facebook and Reddit. At one point, he said I was manufacturing child pornography in my law office and put my address and phone number right there, so he was definitely fired up. End quote. John Melo sounds super stable, doesn't he? Remember how law enforcement found a baggie of cocaine at the crime scene? Vanessa testified that while she was guardian ad litem, she had Christina and her sister both drug tested, and they never tested positive for any drugs. Was that baggie planted? I think one of the most interesting things she said was that Mello hadn't seen his daughter since April of 2021. In South Carolina, if you haven't visited your child or paid child support for 6 months, you can lose your parental rights. October 2021, the month Christina was murdered, was the 6-month mark. While Mello sent me several emails, he really didn't say much in them. They tended to mostly be about Lutina Parcell, Christina's sister, Walt Wilkins, the Greenville County Judicial Circuit Solicitor, also known in other parts of the country as Chief Prosecutor or District Attorney, Dan Bevel, investigator with the Greenville County Sheriff's Department, and the aforementioned Vanessa Cormo. Again, when I quote Mello, it's exactly as he wrote them, but I've added corrections in brackets. Mello claimed that Lutina Parcell is part of a child sexual abuse material ring, and I'll refer to that as CSAM from here on out. In the first video I made, we learned that Bradley Post and Christina Parcell have both been accused of manufacturing CSAM that included photos of Christina and John Mello's daughter. These are the charges that Bradley Post is sitting in jail for. The judge in the trial was not letting this information into evidence because it didn't have any bearing on the murder. That must mean that no one knew about the CSAM before the murder. Mello also claimed that, quote, there are criminal complaints and arrest warrants out for the Aunt Lutina Parcell, who owned a canebrake house, end quote. As of the making of this video, there are no records of her being arrested. I also received an email from a third party like the ones Vanessa testified about, and it was from a Proton Mail account, and supposedly from a former Greenville County solicitor. But they wrote exactly like John Mello did. The writer of the email claimed that, quote, "We believe her goal, meaning Lutina, is to kill Mello's daughter and to keep her from telling what she knows about Brad Post. Lutina, high-profile lawyer and best friend of Post, Thomas Traxler and Walt Wilkins, both are in the child pornography materials." End quote. And that was one of the dumbest fake emails I've ever received. And I have to wonder why Mello is pushing the narrative that everyone involved in the case, except for him, is involved in CSAM. I mean, it's just a little weird to accuse everyone who is speaking out about him of being in on it. Also, misspelling your last name in that fake email wasn't fooling anyone, you doink. Mello claims that Walt Wilkins and Lutina made a silent deal, although he didn't expound on what the deal was, nor how he learned of it. He also claimed that, quote, "Walt Wilkins steals guns from evidence for the drug cartel, and he charges me with saving and protecting my daughter? He imposed a media blackout here, verified by Steve Tierney, formerly with Fox New York City, and Christina Corbin," end quote. Okay, one, he didn't charge Mello with saving and protecting his daughter. He charged him with mailing explicit photos of his daughter's mother. And why would two New York journalists know what Walt Wilkins was doing? Dan Bevel investigated a large portion of the claims made between Christina and John while they were fighting for custody of their daughter, namely the charges that Mello and Zachary Hughes are facing for conspiracy and harassment that stem from those photos. The photos were mailed from Greenville and from Knoxville, Tennessee. Cell phone data proves that Zachary Hughes was in both of the locations on the days the photos were mailed. The original photos were taken with Christina's consent, but were for personal use. However, the mailed photos were allegedly pulled from an escort service website. But digital forensic techs were not able to find the website. And there were also discrepancies between the various photos. Some had the website address superimposed on them and others didn't. And the font type and the size of the website address varied between the photos. In other words, they appear to have been photoshopped. Mello also claims that Dan Bevel is actually the person who killed Christina. Quote, "I have files, covered up reports, police reports. Dan Bevel is the killer. Wilkins, the sheriffs, Cormo are all involved. Dan Bevel, Greenville County Sheriff Office is key. He is the link to it all." Mello also claimed that, quote, "Vanessa Cormo, who I am suing, is involved in the Parcell child porn ring with her Ukrainian husband. It sounds nuts, I know, but since 2018, I have tried to expose this and they cover it up. I've had death threats, been jailed, had a cop try to come after my daughter and I at midnight in the rain at my house. How do I know he was a cop? He dropped his badge. Yes, I still have it." End quote. Well, you're right, John Boy. That does sound nuts. All of it sounds nuts. Totally bonkers, cuckoo, nutter puffs, doolally nuts. The emails that John sent me didn't make me want to tell his side of the story. They did make me think that he might not be an entirely truthful person, though. The impression I get of John Mello is that he talks a much bigger game than he actually lives. I think he's always been on the fringiest fringes of fame, kind of an off Broadway. And he is constantly reaching for but consistently missing the brass ring. It shows in the 40-year-old photo of him with little Richard, and that he refers to the doll head as something he built. Even him referring to it as south of LA instead of just saying Anaheim speaks to him wanting to appear to be bigger than he actually is. From the divorce documents in 1992 to Operation Melodrama in 2014 to being charged with harassment and conspiracy in 2023 and now accusing everyone in the case of horrible acts, it seems that John Mello hasn't changed over the years. It seems as though bullying is how he goes through life, elbowing anyone who crosses him out of his way. The trial of Zachary Hughes began again today, February 18th. It will be interesting to see how it goes. All of the individuals mentioned in this video are innocent until proven guilty. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, share, and hit the subscribe button as this helps my channel grow. For added perks, join my Patreon at the link in the description box. Until next time, stay safe and be happy.